I'm Mark.
And I'm Josh.
And this is Alter Ego Comics TV episode number 154. We're back, as we always are, with this week's best comics and another top 5 list for you. You'll have to stay tuned to the end of the episode or just hit fast forward or...
Fast forward? What are you watching this on?
Just hit the arrow that makes the video move forward. That's fast forward. All right, folks, what do you call... If you're watching a YouTube video and you want to skip ahead, I guess you just drag
click, drag
the bar, right?
Yeah.
Well, don't do that.
Or hover over it, then you get the thumbnails.
Watch the whole thing, and then get to the top 5 list. Coming to you from Alter Ego Comics, inside my office, actually. We may end up shooting here on a regular basis because we keep shooting later and later in the day, and as more traffic is coming into the store, it's kind of disturbing. But to me, anyway,
traffic is disturbing.
I don't like shooting videos when there are people walking around the store. It's just really weird.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is part of my office. This is part of my collection back here. Thanks for joining us. Nice to have you in my home.
On Antiques Roadshow.
Yeah.
What we have here is Apache Chief.
I'm going to change into my cardigan and my tennis shoes, my sneakers. Anyway, another solid week. I don't know if I'd say, it's an awesome week, but I don't know if it warrants the word awesome. There are some books that were awesome. And the most awesome missed. The most awesome book in my stack was American Vampire Second Cycle #1 by Scott Snyder and Raphael Albuquerque. I love this series. This is, in fact, if you go back and watch Alter Ego Comics TV episode number whatever, someone asked if we could only read, I think it was 3 series for the rest of our lives. Like you're on an island, but somehow you're still getting mail, and you can only get 3 series. One of my 3 was American Vampire. It's that good. So, this is the return of American Vampire. It's been on hiatus for a year? I think it's been
more than a year.
More than a year. So, about this, you don't have to have read anything prior to this to be able to pick this up. My hunch is that if you do pick this up and you've never read American Vampire, you'll want to go back and check out the previous stuff. If you're already a fan, then welcome home. This is great stuff. This is the continuing adventures of Pearl and Skinner Sweet, not together, separate in the 1960s in 2 different locations within the United States. And we're moving forward. And Scott Snyder has said that some major stuff is going to happen. That if you thought big stuff happened in the first half of American Vampire, then you're going to be blown away by what happens next. Pearl is set up in Louisiana. And I can't say too much without giving stuff away, but she's in Louisiana. And I will say, I think it's fair for me to say this. She's actually living in the home that she grew up in. Mm-hmm. And she has neighbors that were there when she was a young girl, and she's passing herself off as her own daughter, which is interesting. Skinner Sweet is in New Mexico. And has reverted to his old bad guy ways. And he's kind of like...
Did he ever really
Well, he really did.
Reform?
I mean, when Sabretooth joined the X-Men, that's Skinner Sweet to me, it's like when Sabretooth joined the X-Men. Was he really going to be a good guy? No. But they're 2 very interesting characters. They're the 2 American vampires. And I'm preaching to the choir, I think, if you've already read this, or you're already reading American Vampire. So here's the pitch. If you're not, just pick it up and read it. If you're reading Scott Snyder's Batman, this is a no-brainer. If you like his writing, he was doing this before he got the Batman gig. This was what got him the job doing Batman and other books over at DC Comics. So there is a nice summary at the back explaining kind of Pearl's backstory and Skinner's backstory, but they also give it in the comic. It's just really good, folks. And Raphael Albuquerque is great on this. He's actually credited as a co-creator, so I don't know whether they worked this out over tea or what at Comic-Con. My pick of the week, American Vampire Second Cycle #1. Plop. That just got picked up by the mic.
Next up, my pick of the week is Daredevil #1 from Marvel Comics, written by the all-new creative team of Mark Waid and Chris Samney. I'm sorry, written by Mark Waid with art by Chris Samney, and the all-new Marvel Now style. And if you've read the ending of the previous Daredevil series, Matt's life is kind of jacked up. His best friend, Foggy, is dying of cancer. He may or may not have been disbarred, although it doesn't seem like he's disbarred. I'm pretty sure they said they were going to disbar him.
No, apparently you can be disbarred in different states. If you're disbarred, it's wherever state you took the bar. So he's been disbarred. He's been disbarred in New York, but he can practice law in California. I don't know how that
California
works.
doesn't check to see if
We should check with Charles
We should call Charles Soule. He'll
and
know.
see what he says.
So call us, Charles. So Matt is in San Francisco, the city by the bay, the city that rocks, the city that never stops. And he is practicing both as, well, he's in a legal practice with a friend that you may recognize previously, and he's also running around as Daredevil. He's already set up a relationship with the cops, although some of it's pre-existing because he did live out there for a while in 70s, 80s. It was a while
Isn't that
ago.
where he met Elektra? Didn't they meet at school out west? Or was that in New York?
There was snow when they went out running, so I always assumed it was New York.
Okay.
But I don't know that for
We
a
need
fact.
a fact checker on this show. We don't know what we're talking about.
So, Mark Waid's Daredevil. Still awesome. I really like the way that it was kind of... Waid is really good at introducing problems that are a problem for Daredevil. His power set is sort of unique, and he can tell when people are lying. He's not, he sees in the dark essentially with his echolocation. He can pick up vibrations that normal people wouldn't. So coming up with things that can trick Daredevil and be believable are very difficult. And Waid has just been really good at that throughout his whole run, and it's still true in this one. And this has an ending that is a big question mark, essentially. We're left wondering what's going on, and there's a potential gut punch there depending on which way it goes. So Daredevil #1 is super awesome.
Agreed. You know what else is awesome? Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Season 10, #1. This is written by Christos Gage, artwork by Rebecca Isaacs, and executive produced by Joss Whedon. I don't know what that means.
I'm picturing him sitting over her shoulder going, no, that line goes to the left.
Yes.
You need more commas, Chris.
So, I'm a Buffy fan. I enjoyed Season 8 when it came out. I didn't finish Season 8, and I didn't read anything in Season 9, but I was able to pick this issue up, and I loved it. It gave a great... It brought me up to speed very easily with what's going on with all the members of the Scooby Gang. We've got... all the Buffy players are now in the same universe. And when Buffy Season 8 started, Angel was over at IDW, and Buffy was at Dark Horse. So you couldn't have those characters showing up in each other's books. Well, now we've got the whole gang. Is Angel in this?
Yeah. Actually...
Maybe he's mentioned. He's mentioned, but I don't think he's in this because he's in London.
Right.
But Faith is in this, and the other book over at Dark Horse that's starting again soon is Angel and Faith, season whatever. But Christos Gage is doing a great job with the writing on this. He really nails the characters, and Rebecca Isaacs' artwork is outstanding. Much more comic book style than George Genty. His was more cartoony, and that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but I really like Isaac's artwork on this. I don't know what I can say without spoiling stuff. So, Giles is back. Giles was gone for a while.
Yes, Giles died.
As in deceased at the end of Season 8.
In
right?
end of Season 8, yes.
Okay, Giles.
And then Faith and Angel were trying to bring him back during Season 9. And, yes. Giles is back.
Giles is back, but he's not the Giles that you know. Let me leave it at that. Which makes for good reading. Mm-hmm. And apparently Faith is going to be hanging out for a little while.
That's how it appears.
Just good stuff.
It really is. Well, and I think the Giles-Buffy relationship was always kind of the core emotional relationship of the series. Yeah. She has so many abandonment issues from her father. The surrogate father figure is really, that's the emotional core,
Yeah.
And I really like that if you watched the Buffy series, if you didn't, you may still enjoy the book, but I don't know who you are because everyone watched Buffy. But all of the characters that you see at the end of the last episode of Buffy are represented or referenced in this issue. You can go from that to this and with very little trouble pick up what's going on.
Yeah, because they are explaining kind of what came before in seasons 8 and 9. So if for some reason you're a Buffy fan and you weren't aware that Buffy comics were out there and these are fully licensed and authorized by Joss Whedon, jump right in with Season 10, #1, and then go back and pick up the trades or oversized library edition hardcovers of previous seasons. So I'm back on board the Buffy train. The B train.
It's westbound. All right. We've got Miss Marvel #2. Mark and I both really liked the first issue, and the second issue was good as well. It extended the promise. We see the main character...
Kamala?
Well, I wasn't trying to think of her name. She's not thwarting authority, but she's snuck out from her house, from her strict parents, and she's been exposed to the Terrigen mists, which has caused her to cocoon up and develop superpowers, which are not overly clear. She's a shapeshifter of some kind. She can change her dimensions and proportions. And she's not... What I love about this is the way she's kind of learning how the powers work. Too many times, we've got, I'm bit by a spider, and then 4 pages later, I'm like swinging through the city streets. It's neat to see her kind of work out what she can do and what she can't do, and figure out what parts of it are psychological and which parts aren't. And we've also got her coming into contact with some people from school who are maybe less than nice to her, and it's just great. I really love the way she's portrayed as kind of like a Marvel fangirl, and yeah, it just pays off emotionally. It's just a really well put together book.
It is, absolutely. And as a fan and as a retailer, we need more books like this. We need books with new characters that can grow and become permanent members of the Marvel Universe or the DC Universe or wherever, because we can't just keep going back to the well over and over again with Spider-Man and Batman and Captain America. There are great stories to be told with those characters, but some of the best stuff that Marvel has done, in my opinion, in the last decade have been books like Runaways and Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man and Sam Alexander as Nova. But try and name, Young Avengers would be another one. I think that those characters are really strong, and they're unfortunately they're struggling to find a fan base. So this new Ms. Marvel, I think, is in the same boat. It's an interesting new character with familiar powers and a familiar look because she idolizes Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. But there's definitely a lot of room for growth, and hopefully they can keep talented creators on it to keep it going. But fans need to go out and support these newer books when they're good. I mean, we wouldn't be telling you to buy something that is crap. We just wouldn't, either in our store here or through the videos, because we want you to support good stuff when we love good comics. And Ms. Marvel is one of those books. You need to go out and pick it up and support it, and tell Marvel that you will support new characters instead of using and recycling the same characters over and over and over again. I am a huge Rush fan. Not the drug movie with, what's-his-face? The guy from Speed 2. That's what I go for, Speed 2. Lost Boys? What is his name?
I don't know. I didn't see Speed 2.
I didn't see
Rush
Rush
There's a lot
either.
of people in Lost Boys. Kiefer Sutherland?
Let's just start over. There's this band from Canada called Rush.
If you ever saw Freaks and Geeks, they talked about it a lot.
They're a prog rock band. They've been around for 40 years. Very long time. Probably my favorite band ever. So, when I heard that Boom Studios was going to be doing a comic book adaptation of their most recent album, and I will say album because I feel weird saying CD, or their most recent download, their most recent MP3 collection, Clockwork Angels, which is a concept album, but I honestly didn't know it was a concept album until someone told me it was a concept album.
Aren't all Rush albums concept albums?
Pretty much, yeah, because I just dig the music. But Clockwork Angels is kind of a steampunk, futuristic concept album. It has been turned into a novel by writer Kevin J. Anderson, who's done a lot of work in the Star Wars universe and is very familiar to fans of fantasy and sci-fi. But it's also got involvement from Rush's drummer, Neil Peart, and artwork by Nick Robles, who is new to the comic book world. So this is the story of a young lad in the world of the Clockwork Angels universe who is very... you don't listen to Rush, so I could just say anything I wanted to at this point. But Rush has a song.
Tom Sawyer.
They have a song. It's on 2112. It's about this kid who finds a guitar in this world without music, and the elders are all, no, put that away. We don't want that happening. And he, plays the guitar, and all of a sudden the gates crash and all this fun stuff. Anyway, this guy, he longs for something more than the life that he has within this very structured society. And we see that maybe he might get to have that. He hops a train, very much like a hobo, and there's a love interest, and there's a benevolent ruler, but then there's an evil dictator as well. I'm not summarizing this very well, but it's kind of tough to summarize anything about Rush very easily. So if you're a fan of the band, Rush. If you're a fan of steampunk, if you're a fan of sci-fi fantasy, Clockwork Angels is for you. This is a 6-issue miniseries from Boom Studios.
And I would go further than that. I would say structurally, it's definitely fantasy, bordering on sci-fi maybe. And I would definitely see influences there. People that are fans of Catching Fire. What's the first one called?
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games, because you've got a society where everything's all messed up. You've got a young protagonist.
So pretty much any young adult novel.
Really, yeah. I mean,
it's being done now and turned into a movie.
It appears to have a hero's journey in it, and there's clockwork people, and it was a lot of fun. It was much more. A lot of times when you see projects from musicians and from people that aren't really writers in the strictest sense, they tend to be a little formulaic, and this was not at all that. I mean, there's echoes of the hero's journey, but it's definitely cool. And it's got Kevin J. Anderson. He wrote the Jedi Academy trilogy and that Superman Batman novel. So
yeah.
It's got cred. Of course, he also wrote Darksaber, but we'll forgive him for that.
Carry on.
I'm just saying, they built a lightsaber, a Death Star-sized lightsaber in space.
Dude, I never read Darksaber.
Dude, it was awful. Well, it wasn't awful, but it was not as good as I thought it was when I read it when I was
I only
12.
have time to read comics now. I can't read novels.
It was like 20 years ago. Batman and Aquaman, number 29. Because we were done with Batman and Two-Face, and we're back into the Batman and...
I missed the first 28 issues of Batman Aquaman.
Still written by Pete Tomasi, with art by Patrick Gleason, and this is titled The Hunt for Robin. So Ra's al Ghul has stolen, grave robbed the bodies of Talia and Damian from Wayne Manor, and Bruce is going to get them back, and it appears that he's on an island, and when you're Batman and you have to go in the ocean, the guy you call is Aquaman. It's a great team up. There's a lot of cool references to the other books and stuff that are going on, and it's just a classic kind of fun. One of those fun books where you team up to find the body of your dead son.
It's kind of like The Brave and the Bold, but darker.
Yeah, it's definitely got an edge because of what it's about, and it's actually fairly unsettling because Talia was working on making these clones of Damien, if you remember from Incorporated, but they were all like genetically modified. So Ra's has this army of like grotesquely deformed Damians that he sends at Bruce, and it's really unsettling.
It's kind of like Alien Resurrection, where they had a bunch of the Ripley clones that were all deformed. Sure. I hate that movie, by the way.
Sorry, Joss Whedon.
Yeah,
Try
Joss
harder.
Whedon. Oh man, that movie was messed up. I've only seen it once. Saw it once in the theater, and it was messed up.
Batman and Aquaman number 29. Not as messed up as Alien Resurrection.
Yes.
But no, it was good, great character moments, and definitely some stuff that's a little more unsettling than you would typically see in a mainstream book.
And there's water.
And there's water and whales. Brutus is in here, Damien's dog, for some reason. Bruce takes him along, riding shotgun like Chewbacca.
All right. All right, so two things we want to talk about that we don't really need to talk about, but Saga Volume 3 is out now, and it's awesome.
So awesome.
I don't know what else I can say. It is the best book being published today. The best comic book being published today.
Hands down. And the best thing I can say about this specific volume of Saga is it is a book that in no meaningful way moves forward the chronology of the series.
No meaningful way?
The chronology?
So
no.
it does not move.
It does not move it forward.
Okay.
At the end of the last volume, if you recall, Prince Robot shows up and shoots the dude. And that's where this one functionally ends as well. But it goes back and fills in so much stuff and reinterprets what we've already seen in an amazing way. It's just great.
It is. All 3 volumes in stock at any good comic book store.
Also in stock at any good comic book store, Sex Crims 5 from Matt
Sex
Fraction.
Criminals, not Crims.
The cool kids call it Sex Crims. Sex Crimin? That's how we do it. Matt Fraction, Chip Zdarsky. It's funny, it's poignant, it's awesome. And it's going away briefly, but it's okay. Step off the ledge. It will be back, and we will be seeing a collected edition a little later than we expected, but it'll still be out in time to set you up for the second run.
It'll be out before Free Comic Book Day, so we may be pimping this hard on Free Comic Book Day to the families of all the children that will be coming in on Free Comic Book Day. Kids, get your free comics. Moms and dads, get your Sex Criminals. Or adults, not just moms and dads. And again, don't forget to read the letters pages. I started thinking about this as I was reading the letters pages of Sex Criminals number 5 last night. If these are not in the collected edition, it will be so sad.
Yeah.
Anyone that's waiting to read this in collected edition, you will miss out on 50% of the enjoyment of the series if the letters pages are not in the collected edition. So a lot of the
However, they may get the actual
story
song. No,
yes, you may get the
Fat Bottom Girls.
Yes.
There are 7 pages of letters in here, and every one of them
pictures of people reading sex criminals at Applebee's and
showing us their Kegel faces.
Yeah, it's just so good. I love it, man. I'm gonna reread this. I'm gonna reread the hell out of this when it comes out in collected edition. I hope they do an oversized hardcover that includes the letters pages.
Letters pages would be cool.
All right, so top 5 time. Top 5 comic book deaths. Dun dun dun. Number 1, Gwen Stacy.
I don't even know if we need to say anything
Number
about
2.
that. Spoiler alert for possibly first Amazing Spider-Man 2. But
yes, if you're going to the theater to see Amazing Spider-Man 2 in May, Gwen may die.
Could happen.
That's just the way it happened. I mean, it happened like how many years ago? In the 70s. So it's been quite a while.
Was it the 70s or
the
late
60s?
60s? Okay.
It was the 70s. So many great things about that. No one saw it coming. Everybody loved Gwen. It was pre-internet, so there were no leaked news stories, and Marvel's PR machine wasn't sending out press releases every day to retailers and news outlets about, oh, you gotta get this. It's the next greatest, latest, blah, 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 which is what my inbox is full of every day, by the way. Gwen Stacy... Did Peter actually kill her when he tried to save her with his web and her neck cracked? Or was she dead from the fall? Was she dead before the Green Goblin pushed her off the GW bridge?
Don't know.
Such a great story.
Yes.
And it really, in addition to the death of Uncle Ben, which I don't think we're talking about.
No, we tried to cut it to 1 per character.
Yeah.
And actual in-story stuff. That's actually a backstory.
It made Peter Parker who he is.
Absolutely.
So... Gwen, we miss you.
Yeah, and then I think one of the best arguments for the death of Gwen Stacy as functionally incredibly significant is House of M. Where you pick that one. If you can pick one moment in time to change to cause an emotional reaction from Peter Parker, it's saving Gwen Stacy and then taking her away again at the end of this. Bendis, you're a jerk.
House of M, for those of you that haven't read it, gives all the heroes, for the most part, the world that they want. The mutants, anyway, are living in a world where the mutants are on top of the food chain. Yeah, and Spider-Man gets everything he wants, and he's married to Gwen and has kids, and Uncle Ben is still alive, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember that specifically, but it's possible.
But yeah, the gut punch when...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he comes back to our world remembering the family he had. Anyway,
next up, number 2.
Next up, Jean Grey. Anytime, pick any specific Jean Grey death you like. I'm thinking mainly of the first one or the second one. The death of Phoenix, I guess, is the one I'm going, even if it wasn't really Jean Grey because of retcons or whatever.
Death on the Shi'ar homeworld.
Yes. The trial and the sacrificing herself. And yeah.
Yeah, it was timeless and until they decided to bring her back in the pages of Avengers and X Factor. Or it was Avengers and Fantastic Four, I'm sorry, to start the X Factor series.
Was it the first time she came back or the second time?
That was the first time she came back.
Okay.
She was in a cocoon at the bottom of the ocean.
Right. Because it wasn't really the Phoenix. The Phoenix made a replica of her and left her real body to heal.
It was very convoluted.
Yeah.
But to 10 or 12-year-old me, when I was reading it, it was fine.
Super awesome.
And that does have an influence on our list here. I mean, I think depending on how old you were and what your mindset was when you were reading these books, these are kind of undeniable, but they had different emotional impacts. I don't have as big of a connection to the death of Jean because she is still around. Gwen is not around.
Right.
And they've attempted, in various ways to show, they cloned her. They told the hidden love story between Norman Osborn and Gwen Stacy that we will never speak of again, J. Michael Straczynski. I like everything you do, man, except that sucked. Anyway. So we're up to number 3. Let's go with Superman.
Now,
yes, asterisk. At the time that this happened, the world lost its stuff when Superman died.
Yeah.
It was like front page news. Media was covering lines at comic book stores for people wanting to buy a copy. Mm-hmm. You got the black armband, you had the black bagged issue. There was the lead up to it with Doomsday stomping his way across the country to get to Metropolis.
Starting in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah.
Just down the street here.
Just down the street from us. Well, down the street, we mean about 60 miles.
Down the interstate.
Yeah, it was huge. And
massive.
it turned out great sales. I think believe it or not, I think it got some people into comic books. I mean, they went into a comic book store for the first time because they wanted to buy The Death of Superman, and I'm assuming that some of them stayed comic book fans. Many of them flipped their comics, within a week and doubled their money or tripled their money.
They were the smart ones, probably.
Yes. Now everyone has a black-bagged copy of Superman 75. So it was a big deal.
No, it was a big deal. And it was, regardless of its ramifications in story, its meta ramifications can't even be measured. The number of people who have died and come back since Superman, in a lot of ways.
And that's the downside to it.
Yes.
Is that death in comics has become a cheap stunt. Unlike what it was with Jean Grey and Gwen Stacy, which were, story points. They were plot points, and they were meant to shake up the status quo.
Yes.
Now anytime we see we see a character die, we all know that they're coming back at some point. I wish, and that's one of the great things about independent books, is that when those characters die, they usually don't come back. So if you're looking to read books that have emotional impact, and where characters stay dead, you got to go to the world of the indie for the most part.
Yeah. And The Death of Superman, I guess if the list is greatest deaths, World War II was not good. We didn't like World War II, but World War II was great and impactful. So in the same respect that the Holocaust and horrible things can be important, The Death of Superman was one of the most important things.
Dangerous ground, my friend. I'm staying away from you.
All
Send
right.
all hate letters to Josh at Alter Ego Comics.
Also, if you're more interested in The Death of Superman, you absolutely have to watch the Max Landis video on YouTube.
Yes,
it is
just
great.
type in Max Landis.
10 minutes. It is a little adult content as far as language, but
yes,
absolutely worth your time.
All right, so I said Superman. You're up
You said
next.
Superman. I'm up next with another death in comic books.
Well, I thought of one that
Maybe
we
they're
can
still
throw
there.
in there.
Okay, what do you got?
Jason Todd.
Jason Todd is important. Sure.
It was an important death for a number of reasons.
Yeah. Not least of which being because we killed him.
That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was open to the fans, and for those of you that are too young to remember,
Jason Todd was the second Robin.
Haven't heard the stories. Jason Todd, of course, the second Robin. Dick Grayson grew out of the tidy greenies and became Nightwing and was no longer a partner with Batman. And Jason Todd was a little street thug who was trying to boost the hubcaps off the Batmobile. And was taken under Bruce's wing and was trained to be the next Robin. And he had a lot more anger. He had many issues. He had no problem. He was kind of in the middle between Dick Grayson and Damian. Damian has no problem flat out killing people.
Oh yeah, Damian was raised by killers.
Jason Todd would beat the crap out of people until they were seriously immobilized and needed therapy for the rest of their lives. But they open it up to the fans. This is yours, right? I shouldn't be talking
it doesn't matter. I was going to say, the important thing, if we're talking about the importance of the call-in, the important thing to remember is...
Let's go back a step. So there was an 800 number.
900 number?
900, yeah, you had to pay.
Yeah, you had to pay.
You had to call and pay to vote to either keep Jason Todd / Robin alive or ice him. And
we iced him.
He was iced by a wide margin, I believe, and he was annoying because he wasn't Dick Grayson, and he was the second act. It was, to me, never mind. I was talking about Jean-Luc Picard and Captain Kirk. I hate Picard. Kirk's my man.
Well, but I mean, if we're looking at it from an evolutionary standpoint, that's not DC's fault. DC gave us a Jason Todd that was more likable, and nobody liked him. The original version of Jason Todd pre-Crisis was much closer to a Dick Grayson. He was basically a Dick Grayson clone, and nobody liked him at all. So they tried to give him a new character when they went and retold the origins with the Infinite Crisis, resetting all of continuity, and we didn't like that either, so we killed him.
Oh, I remember what we're going to talk about now.
Okay, cool.
I remember the death. So Jason Todd... he mentioned Crisis, so...
Oh, yeah,
Did we
Crisis.
talk about from Crisis?
The Flash, Barry Allen, not just...
How long is this video? This is like 45 minutes long, man. Go ahead.
It's been retconned to not actually be a death, being lost in the Speed Force or whatever. But, of course, none of these deaths are really deaths anymore. They've all been back.
The only one, Gwen Stacy's the only one that stayed dead.
But... The Flash, a key founding member of the Justice League, dies in Infinite Crisis, and he dies horrifyingly. They have him, the echoes through time, and his body kind of disintegrates.
And he appears in certain time periods, like he appeared to Batman, and he appeared to some of the villains, and it was just, it was the Joker. He appeared to the Joker.
Yeah.
And the significance at the time was that this was the first major hero to die. And it looked, there was no evidence. This was before the death of Superman, where we knew that guys were going to be coming back left and right. There was no evidence that Barry Allen was ever coming back. And even as we got into, the 21st century, Barry was still dead. I mean, this was
Yeah, even in Quiver, Barry's in heaven running around.
Over 20 years,
Yeah.
the Flash stayed dead. And it was this huge universe spanning, thread with the Anti-Monitor, collapsing all of the infinite worlds into one. And we talked about this one as well, but Supergirl dies as well in Crisis on Infinite Earths. But the Flash, and they were back-to-back issues. I mean, it was like DC was punching everybody in the gut. It was, kill Barry Allen, kill Supergirl the next issue, and then there were tons of people that died.
Oh yeah, but a lot of them were from
entire worlds died. Yeah. But the biggest were Barry Allen Flash and Kara Zor-El Supergirl. So that's it. That's our top 5. We left somebody off because the Jason Todd was a substitution. Was a last-minute substitution. And yeah, that's it. This video is running way long, so thank you for your patience. If you're still watching, if you're asleep, lift your head up off the keyboard and go to bed. We'll see you next week.